Okay, guys, I would like to go over the practice problems for 8.5, Objective 8.5. They are in your notes. I posted a Google Doc with them, and I want to go over how we got these answers so that we're better prepared for our assignment later this week. So first thing, remember that the dew point and the air temperature, if they are close, if the air temperature is very close to the dew point temperature, we have a high humidity. If they are very far apart, we have a low humidity. So in order to use page 12 and determine the relative humidity or the dew point, we need two things. One, we need the air temperature. The air temperature is the same as the dry bulb temperature. Okay, so blue is not the best color here. So the air temp, again, I'm writing with my mouse, so I apologize. The air temp is the same thing as the dry bulb. Remember, the dry bulb is on that sling psychrometer, and it does not have the piece of cloth on it that represents the evaporation temperature. So air temp is the dry bulb. So this dry bulb right down here is the same as your air temperature. And some people get that a little confused. Maybe you're provided with the air temperature and you don't know where to get the dry bulb. They are the same thing. Okay, that's the first thing we need. We also need the difference between the two. The difference between the wet bulb and the dry bulb temperature. All right. Now, if we do not have that information, let's imagine that we have the relative humidity percent. If we have the relative humidity percent and we know the air temperature, let's say that the air temperature is 20 and I know that the humidity is 74. I can follow it over and then up to get my difference. I now know that there's a difference of 3. And remember that the wet bulb right here is always less than the dry bulb because of evaporation. So it's 3 degrees less. So if the dry bulb was 20 and we determined the difference was 3, the wet bulb would have to be 17 degrees Celsius. I don't know what's going on here with my computer, but it's 17 degrees Celsius. I really don't know what's going on with the lines, but we're going to keep going here. So let's look at the questions. I will move back and forth between the reference table, but I encourage you to have yours out as well. So the first thing is, what is the relative humidity? So I'm using the humidity chart here. When the air temperature is 29, this is the dry bulb, and the wet bulb temperature is 23. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the difference here? So we can determine the difference by subtracting the dry bulb from the wet bulb. So 29 minus 23, that's a 2, provides us with a difference of 6 degrees Celsius. Again, I don't know what's going on with my mouse here. 6 degrees Celsius. So if we go back, again, dry bulb is 29, difference is 6. If we go back, we're looking for relative humidity here. We know that the dry bulb we said was 29. And if we notice, that is not on the chart, but it is right here in between 28 and 30. And then we also know the difference we said was 6. So let's follow 6 all the way down to where it's going to meet with where 29 would be. Now we have 28 and 30. 29 is in between there. Here's your 28 on the top there, and the 30 is on the bottom. So somewhere in between these two numbers represents the humidity. Well, at 28 degrees, it's 59%. At 30 degrees, it's 61%. 29 is in between 28 and 30, which means the humidity is going to be in between 59 and 61. So for number 1, we should have a humidity of 60%. Number 2, what is the dew point? So we're looking at the dew point chart here. What is the dew point if the air temperature is 26, so that's the dry bulb, and the humidity is 7? Now remember, we always need to find, the difference. Again, I apologize for the mouse. So we need to figure out what this difference is, but we don't have a wet bulb to subtract. But we can use the relative humidity chart and find a dry bulb temperature of 26 and follow it over to where the humidity is 77%, and then get our difference. Let's take a look at that. Again, we're using the relative humidity chart. I went ahead one here. So we said that the relative humidity is 77%, and the air temperature is 26. So again, the air temperature is the dry bulb. We follow it all the way down. We find 26. I'm going to follow it over until I find 77. 77% was the humidity. I'm going to follow this all the way up to get my difference, and that gives me a difference of 3. So the air temp is the same thing as saying the dry bulb. It is 26 degrees Celsius. Yes, buddy?
I think my twisted might be a little loud too, that's why.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll lower my voice a little bit. Okay. We know the difference is 3. This is a 3. Again, I don't know what's going on. Here we are. So what number can I subtract, or what is the wet bulb? What number can I subtract to get the difference? It would be 23. But the question's not asking for that. It's asking what the dew point is. So we have to look at this chart. Again, using these charts, you need 2 pieces of information. The air temperature, which is the dry bulb here, and the difference between the two. We have the difference. We have the air temp. So again, let's find 26. We find 3. We follow them until they meet. And in this case, they meet right here at a temperature of 22 degrees. That means that the current air temperature is 26 degrees. If it were to drop and the air temperature were to reach 22 degrees Celsius, that means the air temperature and the dew point would be the same. The humidity would be very high. It would most likely be 100% for the relative humidity, and we would have a very high chance of rain with lots of cloud cover. Thank you, buddy. My son just made me a taco out of fake play material. So if we go ahead, we have 22 degrees Celsius here. Now sometimes you'll have a picture. In this case, the wet cloth is the wet bulb thermometer, and this would be the dry bulb. Remember, the dry bulb is always greater than the wet bulb. So we set it up the problem. Dry bulb goes on top because it's the bigger number. We subtract it from the wet bulb to get our difference. Again, we always need the difference in order to solve many of these problems. So here's our dry bulb. Here's our difference. We need to figure out, for question 3, the relative humidity. So we're at the relative humidity chart. As we mentioned, the difference is 8. Difference is 8. The dry bulb is 18. I'm going to follow it over, and I'm going to follow it down, and I'm going to get 33%. 33%. Now, the next question says, based on the values, what is the dew point? Well, we know the relative humidity is 33%. That's the answer for number 3. What is the dew point? I apologize, guys. I do not know what's going on with my computer and my mouse here. It's not drawing very well. We're going to do the same process for the dew point. We find 18 degrees. We find our difference of 8. We follow it down. And we follow it over. And we figure out where they meet. And they meet at 2 degrees. Yes, can you leave those? Those are pH papers for the fish tank. So the dew point is 2 degrees Celsius. And again, that means that if the 18-degree air temperature dropped to 2 degrees, we would have a dew point temperature matching the air temperature, and we would have a relative humidity of 100%. Now, if we were to compare number 1 to the last 2 questions, what we can see is the larger the difference, okay, the larger the difference here, if we're going, 10, 12, 13, 15 degrees between the two, the smaller and the lower the humidity is. Look at this, 20, 29, 39. Those are some of the highest humidities we can have when we have very far apart temperatures. On the other side of the spectrum, when we have no difference or a degree of difference, we can have a very large or high percentage for the relative humidity. Now, last thing I just want to touch up on is remember that cold air holds less water than warm air because it's smaller. And because of that, sometimes we can see really large jumps in humidity if there's only 1 degree separating the dry bulb and the wet bulb. So there's the first 4 answers and an explanation on how we got them. I will create a second video for the next question.
Today.